Hello and welcome to the shop. I want to start by apologizing for the background noise. It is extremely hot here today, so I have my air conditioner running just to kind of take the edge off. And while it is helping, it is still hot in the shop. I was working on my metal lathe, and just for fun, I chucked up a 1/2-inch aluminum rod and I turned 2 straight blanks that I'm going to press into a slimline pin kit. And I was just really learning the lathe. I didn't record any of it. I don't have any of that footage for you. I probably will show the pin over on Instagram and probably a picture of it on my shop update channel, but I didn't really record any footage. When I got done, I thought, let's try to make a kitless pin on this lathe. And one thing that occurred to me is I'm not super good with the lathe yet, and I was nervous about making the section because it has some very delicate curves, and you really just kind of have to it would be hard for me to do by cranking 3 handles to make that happen. Eventually, I hope to get that good. So I decided to put a tool rest on my metal lathe. I went to the back of the shop. I have a couple of old broken lathes over there, and I scavenged a banjo and a tool post from one of them, and I bought a piece of 16 gauge steel and made myself a banjo tool rest for this lathe. Now, I had already started making it when it hit me. Maybe I should record this. Somebody might find it interesting. So I'm going to start this video where I picked up recording and show you guys what I did. It's going to actually work out really, really well. The only issue that I have is the knob that tightens the tool rest into the banjo. The knob is too big and it's in the way. So I think I'm going to have to hit the big box store and get myself a hex head bolt that I can cut to the proper length and use for tightening that headrest, and I think that'll fix the issue. But I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. Let me know what you think. This is not a permanent solution, it's just temporary until I get better so that I can perform the entire function on one lathe. The ways of my lathe have a 2.5-inch opening beneath them. I picked up some 16 gauge flat steel at the big box store, and I cut a 2.5-inch slice off of the end of it. That slice happened to have holes in it. I lined the 2 end holes up and ran a screw through them, and I applied a nut on the back side. I then found the center and punched it. Now this will go right into the lathe below the ways. When I'm finished with it, what we're going to do now is we're going to drill the center hole out to the diameter of the bolt that goes through my banjo. That will allow us to put the banjo on the lathe and be able to use a tool rest for turning. I need a 5/16 inch hole in the center of this blank. Unfortunately, the closest size bit that I have is a 9/32. So we're going to go ahead and drill that, and then we're going to ream it out just a little bit. I've got some good news. I went back over to a box of old bits that I remembered I had, dug through, and I found a 5/16 inch bit. So instead of wallowing the hole out, we're just going to go ahead and drill it to 5/16. This is the banjo that I plan to use. I recovered it from an older lathe. It normally has this bolt that rides in this track. The bolt hangs down below the lathe and is tightened from beneath. The issue I have with that is this lathe has a couple of very sturdy braces between the ways, and the bolt would interfere and I wouldn't be able to slide my banjo all the way up and down the ways. I went through my junk drawers and I found a 5/16 inch lock washer. So I'm going to apply that to the bolt, and I'm going to run the bolt through the 2 holes that we made in both of our pieces of steel. We'll slide those onto the lathe ways. I'm going to put my hand underneath temporarily to hold that. I'm going to put the banjo on top. I also found a nice 5/16 inch lock washer, and I dug this knob out of a box of junk. Now I can slide this up and down the ways, locate it wherever I want, lock it down. I can install my tool rest, and I can turn custom shapes with a standard lathe turning tool on my metal lathe. As I was demonstrating this tool rest banjo setup that I just put together, I noticed something. Take a look at the knob that tightens the tool rest in the banjo. It sticks out probably 1.5 inches from the end of the banjo. That's no good, because if you're coming down through there with a tool, you could literally bump into the knob and it can restrict you from making your cut. I'm going to take this knob over to a vise, we're going to lock it in, and with the Dremel tool I'm going to cut part of this off so that when we tighten it down, the nut is closer to the banjo and it won't be in the way, restricting my cuts as I'm working a tool across the rest. I need to know how much thread to cut off of this knob, so I made sure it was good and tight, and I applied a piece of tape. Now if I remove the knob, I can see that I really only need about 1/4 inch of threads. So we're ready now to remove the rest of the threads from the knob. I put a little painter's tape around the knob before I put it in the vise, just to protect the plastic. I found a nut in my junk box. It's a little longer than 1/4 inch, not much, maybe it's 3/8 of an inch, but I went ahead, it's the same diameter, same thread pattern, and I put it on the bolt. We're going to cut the bolt off right above the nut. That'll make sure we get a nice straight cut, and then when we're done we can thread the bolt off, and that will help clean up the threads to make sure they fit nicely in the banjo when we're finished. I failed to hit record, but to be honest, you didn't miss much. I just used the Dremel tool and cut the end of the bolt off. Now we'll go ahead and remove the nut. Ooh, still a little warm, not too bad. And that will make sure that our threads, there we go, are nice. We'll get the tape removed from here. We'll thread it into the tool rest, the banjo, and we'll test it out and see if it interferes with the tool any longer. I tested this on the banjo, and the bolt is about 1/2 inch in length, so the knob still sticks out far enough to where it could interfere with a tool. I'm going to go ahead and cut off about 1/3 of it and shorten it up a little more. I don't have a bolt that short to fit it, so I can't run the threads when I'm done, so we'll just have to be really careful, and we may have to use a file to clean those up if there's any issue. Well, let's go ahead now and cut this down. I think this shorter knob is going to work out better. I'm not convinced it's the final solution. I may go to the hardware store and just buy a hex head bolt, cut it off to the right length, and just use a wrench to tighten it, because that would ensure that it was all the way out of my way. I've got a blank chucked up, and if I bring my tool in, you can see as I'm running along the tool, that knob is not going to interfere with my tool or my cut. But still, if I get my hand in here pretty close, I can have some issue with my knuckles. So I do think I'll hit the hardware store and replace this with a hex head bolt. Well guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, it's a little out of the ordinary from what I usually do, but I think it's going to enable me to do some other things in the shop, so I'm really excited about it. I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon, and have a great evening.